Alright, this is my week one against a12 for the greatest showdown. I'm just going to quickly run through the matchup, then show you guys my build, probably pivot back between those two back and forth, and then we'll break down the game um, to see what happened. I wanted to do a live com, but I fucked up the recording, so yeah, I'll try to get better at that. Hopefully, I can get to consistently live comming at some point in the season, but for now, well, we'll have to settle for this post commentary for now. All right, so this is a matchup. Here's a really interesting team. I guess, yeah, in general, a couple of the things I noticed was that here's a really like he drafted this in a really peculiar way, where he got what I feel like is a pretty clear-cut offensive core with his top four Pokemon, Shifu, Palafin, Cinderace, Zoroark, and then he supplemented that with a defensive core right here with his Fezzen, Gliscor, Cyclizar, Alola. Pretty funny. And then he just got some cheap picks with whatever he had left over, just some Pokemon I assume he wants to use. Um, they're not like particularly great, but they each have their own niche. Although I will say Wigglytuff is like really bad. Um, Arguably, I'm pretty sure the whole point of this one is like it's a cheap normal for Spectria, but I doubt he takes it versus me because his team should be like good enough against Spectria, or at least like Wigglytuff is not making enough of a difference against that Pokemon to be worth taking, as he already has uh like basically a Specs repellent with his abundance of normals, which is really the only reason why you take Wigglytuff is to prevent me from choice locking. Um, so yeah, and then I don't know what Survivor does to be honest. I feel like yeah, hard to say. Um, it's just lacking in stats, unfortunately. Um, Meowstick is a nice potential screener, so I can see the utility in that. It can be annoying in some matchups, and screens HO is always a nice strategy to have in your back pocket. And then Eggy is honestly, it's not a bad cheap Terra option. Um, some decent stats hiding behind some awful typing, and the move pool can be interesting as well, I think. It gets okay moves. It's not a bad Pokemon, although the manual Sun angle, which is what I'd assume this is looking into, is a little bit contradictory to the rest of the team, considering you have like Palafin Aloe. Um, Gliscor doesn't love it either. I don't know, it's not so bad. Um, it's just a little interesting, yeah. But I guess it's a cheap Terra Pokemon, like that's what you come to expect from that, so can't really complain too much. Anyways, so let's get into the meat of this. So, um, really, what I didn't expect to come was Cyclizar. Well, outside of the bottom four, I really didn't expect any of those to come versus me, as none of them really stuck out to me as particularly useful in this matchup. So yeah. Anyways, Cyclizar also not particularly useful. It's not incredibly potent offensively, which I had assumed he'd want to keep up offensive pressure against my team. Um, so I also didn't see its utility coming in particularly handy like in this matchup because my hazard game is not incredibly like potent. The speed isn't super useful. Yeah, it just feels mediocre, and depending on how I play this, it could end up doing just literally nothing and being more of a liability than anything else. So yeah, understandable why I think this gets benched. Cool. Okay. So um, what I know for a fact is coming is some sort of Urshifu. Urshifu uh, had, I think there are two major sets that really stuck out to me in this game. Terra Dark and Terra Electric. Terra Electric scared me because his team lacking a flying resist looked like a weakness that I really wanted to capitalize on. However, I was reluctant to really go too hard on that because it could backfire if he goes Terra Electric Urshifu with like bulk up. Um, as it just becomes like painfully difficult to revenge. Um, so because of that, yeah, I was considering some Terraflying Acro Zarude, but I didn't want to commit to that, and I thought there were better options for Zarude to take care anyways, which we'll see soon. But yeah, that was one thing that I was scared of. Um, yep, and it did force a reaction out of me. And then Terra Dark is just more bread and butter, spammable. I don't have the greatest switch into Terra Dark, as Jancy is unlikely to come to this game, as it's just not particularly great against his team, to be honest. And he has ways of punishing me of taking it even without his Cyclizar. For instance, pivot spam into Banded Palafin and Core Change to take away whatever hazards I put up. Speaking of Palafin, Bandit is probably the set that I just expected the most. There was neither potential alternatives, but I guess punching gloves, pads. Punching gloves isn't particularly great. Really, pads is better for him here, I felt. But in general, both of those are much worse than banded. Mainly the reason for this being is that the alternative terra for my zarude is water here. It really stands out as a really solid option. Water allows me to be a nice neutral against most of his team while also beating on his own waters. So it's just really difficult for him to kill, and it's really difficult for him to switch into as well, which is pretty cool. And Terra Water Zarude would give me a really nice sustainable check to Palafin and Cinderace, which my team was lacking beforehand. So yes, because of that, though, any defensive Zarude variant for Palafin, he has to fare Encore or just losing too quickly to make any sort of bulk up set work, which is why bulk up I didn't consider as a viable option. So instead, I assumed he'd just take some sort of immediate offensive angle, which Bandit is clearly the best at in my mind. Theoretically, Scarf as well could have been a thing, but I don't think that makes as much sense as Bandit when you have Jet Punch. So yeah, Banded Elephant really stuck out to me here on his end. Cinderace is really quite simple. It just wants to be boots and click buttons. Fireball, U-turn are both good clicks. Theoretically, Super Fang could have some utility here as well to pressure my team if he puts up hazards with Gliscor, but he doesn't even need that. U-turn is enough. Bring in a threat. Um, the only concern with that is making sure he has a way to kill my Zarude, which is not so easy for him. There are some other techs that he can run. I thought Sucker Punch was highly likely on Cinderace as well. Uh, just trying to, just trying to Spectre proof his team. Seems really relevant in this matchup. Um, and yeah, I don't know. Core Change seemed like a reasonable last. And then there are some other utility moves that he could have considered, like Will-O-Wisp is not bad into my team. Um, forces me to consider jungle healing, although that's already pretty reasonable against Fez and Gliscor. Anywho, Zorak is a potential Scarfer, similar to Urshifu actually. I think they can both run that role quite nicely, although I think Urshifu is best used in a real breaking role in this matchup, but maybe he feels that's not as necessary next to a Palafin, which is understandable. But anyways, Zorak, um, being specs is also understandable because his team is so physically biased. Having a reliable source of potent special offense is pretty relevant here. And unfortunately, my Zarude, if it ever tears, I don't have a Ghost Resist, so it's really quite difficult to switch into. And it gets, yeah, it's just really, really annoying and really powerful because the combination of Sarok plus his other breakers that are all force reactions from me creates a really difficult guessing game for me. Okay, continuing on from that, you got Pheasant. Pheasant is just really annoying for me because it's a status spreader and it's really, really bulky. So it invalidates a lot of my potential offensive angles. So if yeah, it limited my options. It limits my options a little bit. I also found that it was annoying to anticipate like some sort of setup variant because it's so bulky that it kind of just sits on Corviknight and G-King, who would otherwise invalidate it. And then it can try to SD, beat up through my Slowking. It can try to um, nasty plot and just try to force its way through theoretically. I don't know. I think those are potential sets that are like, oh, I suppose Carmine more than Nasty Plot was notable because it can just sit in front of non-Psyshock Slowking Galar. So yeah, but yeah, Pheasant is just annoying because I have to respect those variants as my team doesn't have the greatest means of immediately pressuring it. I have to be a little bit mindful. I have Lando, I have G-King, but yeah, it just forces me to have specific sets and to respect those options, which is a little bit annoying if I wanted to be greedier. Anywho, then you got Gliscor. for similar reasons, very annoying. Um, just a combination of SD forcing me to make sure I can actually kill it or force it out like off the field quickly, and then hazard stack also really quite annoying, especially due to my poor removal into this team, as he has really strong punishes to defog. He has a spin blocker, and he also has potential taunt to even just entirely negate my removal attempts. So yeah, very annoying Pokemon potentially. And then I guess lastly is Aloe. Aloe is just a physical sponge, potential helmet mon that he can throw at my G-Zap if I opt for Choice Band. Um, and yeah, it's a little bit fodder in this matchup for certain Pokemon like Zarude and Spectria. And it's also very, very passive into my pivot core of Slowking Corviknight, but it's an annoying sponge that can contain my Lando Zapdos core, so worth noting. Anywho, yeah, so those are my thoughts on what he'll take. So this is what I took to address that. So the Spectria is just 3 attacks, Nasty Plot Colba with enough defense to live like banded. I think it was banded. Hold on. Yeah. Fuck. Um, sorry about that. Yeah, I think it's Sucker Punch banded from Urshifu is what this was designed to live. Um, cool. Something of the sort. And yeah, it just is faster than everything and clicks attacks. It's got coverage for everything and can cook under the right circumstances. Following that, I got my Fizz Def King. This is one of my ways of addressing SD Gliscor because the rest of my team has no way of immediately touching that guy. And with an SD, he can really. Uh, I would otherwise have to respond with my Zarude, and since I don't have Terra Blast or Encore, it would be really annoying to have to sack HP in some exchange against Gliscor, and depending on how fizz he is, I might not even win that exchange. Zarude is simply too important to be able to risk that. Alternative outs for me on this build would be like Zapdos, or like pivoting around with Lando, but Lando just lets him SD further since I'm walled, and Zapdos, well, has a similar problem since it needs to set up, while also just dying to dual wing beat. So yeah, I definitely felt the need of to have this Slowking to just ensure I had some security around those types of Gliscor sets. If it was some sort of hazard stacking set, then I'd have to punish it with my setup. Um, so yeah, anywho, that's the G-King, a Psychic, of course, also respecting Fizz and Deputy. And if he's some sort of calm mindset, I'd have to Chili into uh, Lando and go from there. So yeah. Um, Speaking of Lando, Scarf. Scarf is a little bit peculiar, but my logic behind this was that I needed a more reliable way to revenge Terra Electric Urshifu, as well as having a more reliable revenger to Cinderace and Zoroark, as my Spectria might, my Spectria, I don't want to put too much pressure on it, and I want to preserve it when possible, and yeah, I feel like Landorus is better for that as a result. More importantly, it's a mon that can revenge without getting absolutely boned by Sucker Punch, which I felt was kind of relevant. So yeah, um, cool mon. I think this is enough to live Scarf and Scarf Pterodark Wicked Blow after rocks. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, cool set. Potentially could click rocks at some point during the game if I get that free turn, but really it's just spamming Earthquake U-turn. Stone Edge is just to cover for some random Terraflying bullshit. So yeah, or just to hit Gliscor just in case. Uh, yeah. Following that, we got this Terra Water Zarude. This Zarude is like the best set. The best set in this matchup on my team by a country mile. Um, this guy is going to carry me. I already knew this going to the game. Everything else is just sort of there to cover for other options, but my entire game plan centralizes around what Zarude does to him. Really, the main question with this Zarude is how does he kill it? Because I can only think of a couple of ways that he can really kill it, and those two ways would be, well, three ways would be taking Eggy, Spec Zorak, Hyper Beam, or if he gets me chipped, some other Specs locked move, and then some sort of Bandit Urshifu. or if he can potentially chip me, maybe he can click a Scarf or Shifu move, but I doubt that does enough. Um, so yeah, the Zarude is just, well, I know it doesn't do enough. I shouldn't say I doubt, I know. Yeah, Zarude is very, very tanky, and the cool thing about this matchup is that he doesn't have any way of killing it, which means that I can afford to run Petal Blizzard. Petal Blizzard as my only attack, which allows me to run Jungle, Healing, and Synthesis at the same time, which makes me completely unkillable. He can't status me to cripple my attack or to put me on a timer, as I can simply uh, refresh that. And then, yeah, Synthesis is important for sustain, of course. And then SD1 attack is fine because Petal Blizzard is punished. It's hitting exactly what I need it to. Uh, they're the only two Pokemon that or the only like Pokemon that I really need to immediately pressure in general are the Urshifu, the Zarag, the Gliscor, and the Palafin. So Petal Blizzard covers all of those, and I sit on Fizzin and Cinderace forever, who are the grass resists. So yeah, unless he took Executor, then I'd be in a bit of trouble. But yeah, I really, really didn't expect that, so I thought this set just completely owned him. And I don't know, taking an Eggy as your Zarude check seems a little bit foolish. So yeah. Anyways, we had this interesting G-Zap set. This was my short-term attempt at responding to Urshifu as well as like a general mid-ground to Fizz Def attack, or not Fizz Def attackers, physical attackers. Um, the point being that I don't have to throw my G-King or my Lando out, and it'll make it theoretically harder for him to go into certain Pokemon. Notably, it makes it, if I'm not having to go into G-King all the time, then it makes his Urshifu harder to bring in, which is nice because that Pokemon like is impossible to switch into for a prolonged amount of time. And then finally, I have my Spidef Corviknight. Defog, it felt relevant into Gliscor, um, and it's something I can throw at Zarak. And yeah, depending on what he does, I'm not really attached to keeping this Pokemon around, so I don't mind using it to scout what his Zarak is. So yeah, that takes me into the game, where he takes basically what I expect, with the exception of benching Gliscor. Benching Gliscor was a surprise, as it's a lack of hazards on his end, as well as yeah, it's a lack of hazards as well as no ground immunity. So my Scarf Lando looks insane here already, and on top of that, my Zarude looks like actually impossible for him to pressure, depending on what his set is, what his sets are. Um, so yeah, the only ways that he has to address my Zarude on lead, I immediately recognize his Zarak and his Urshifu. Everything else loses, like completely. So that's worth keeping in mind. I lead Landers. This was my plan from the very beginning. I probably should have mentioned this, but the other thing that's cool about Scarf Lando is that it can lead and U-turn on basically everything, and I get information because I wanted a way to scout Zorak lead, because otherwise it's just a guessing game, and I have nothing that can mid-ground every single option he has plus a Zorak. So yeah, this felt like the safest option. So I see a lead Cinderace now. Because my Landorus is so valuable in this game, I felt the need to U-turn to it keeps up momentum first of all. Realistically, if he is a Cinderace, he shouldn't U-turn. He could if he's really greedy, but he probably should have respected Scarf. We're going to see that he doesn't. But the other thing that U-turn on my end covers for is if he's Zarag, I can pivot out and go into my Corviknight, and I'll know. Otherwise, I can go into my G-King if he stays in for some reason. But yeah, the reason why I U-turn in favor of Zarag is because I don't kill it with Earthquake, and I don't want to take a Specs hit with my Landorus, seeing as how valuable it is in this game. So yeah, so I'm going to click the U-turn, and it's going to be a Cinderace that stays in on a Scarf Landorus, which is insane, and he clicks U-turn. Fair play to him. I suppose he just didn't consider Scarf as a viable option, so maybe I shouldn't have just allowed him to do this. And Earthquaking his Zarak is not a terrible play either in this matchup, even if I take a like even if I die outright. It's a roll to kill, which is why I really didn't like that. But he wasn't Terra Electric Urshifu, as we see, as he was Terra Dark. So it's not so bad to lose my Landorus in some sort of lead exchange. The main problem is that even if he's on 1 HP, since I'd be sacking my Landorus for it, he's not dying to hazards ever. and he can still get off a hit on my zarude, so it actually doesn't really help my win con that much, which is why I felt like it wasn't a worthy trade. So yeah. Anyways, I go into G King, and here, once again, fearing the possible Zarok, I'm going to go into Corviknight Scouting, as that reveals Banded flip turn. He goes out into a Cinderace. I know this is a Cinderace, so I'm going to go into my Zapdos, because I know it's going to U-turn, but I can't risk my Corviknight just yet, since I want to use it to figure out what a Zarok is. So I'm going to go into Zapdos. Um, Here, I'm like really surprised when he goes into Alola. But yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah, like I said, the main point of Zapdos is to cover for Urshifu switching in. Anyways, yeah, I'm surprised he goes into Alola. It's a really passive response, but I'm like, all right, I'll just attack it to see what happens. I guess I think is what I do. It's either that or I switch into Corviknight and fear of Zoroark again. Um, yeah, actually, no, I remember. Yeah, I've switched into Corviknight and fear of Zoroark because I felt like, why on earth would you go into your Alola for no reason? That makes no sense to me. But I don't know. In hindsight, this was also stupid. Arlo can scout anything that his Zapdos does and flip turn into, say, Palafin or his Zoroark, and he gets to know if I'm Scarf or if I'm Banded, um, which is important information for him, or if I'm not neither at all, which is also good information for him. So this was like entirely possible. Arlo, I think, in spite of that, Corviknight is still not a bad play. Just yeah, not for the right reasons. I don't think this is I don't know. Scouting for Zarak is okay. I At some point I needed to be more aggressive because if you notice, he's doing a ton of damage to my Corviknight and he's just keeping up momentum, and I'm not able to ever get my Zarude in, which is a problem because since I can't ever get my Zarude in, his Cinderace is continually forcing in my Zapdos and my G-King, which is a problem, as neither of them take Fireball or U-turn particularly well. Like if I go Zapdos on a Pyro, it's going to do about half, and I can take that because of Citrus, but it's far from ideal. And then if the G-King comes in on a U-turn, then I'm picking one to Urshifu potentially, and or I'm just picking one to Palafin even, since I know it's Choice Band, which is an even bigger concern since, once again, I don't have my Answer Terra um, yet. So yeah, here I'm going to switch into Zapdos, I believe, since I just can't afford him to U-turn on my G-King. He's going to make the Fireball play, trying to catch me staying in, which, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Here, I'm just going to click rest because I figured it would give me more turns to try to get momentum back from him. And here I'm just going to sleep talk and stand on this, as I was pretty certain that he was going to do the same thing as he did before. Also, this is Banded Aloe, which is interesting. Banded Aloe, I assume, is an attempt at putting more pressure on my team, provide some Aqua Jet utility, and tries to prevent his Aloe from being set up for my Spectrier, I suppose. I don't think it actually works because I can just nasty plot and Draining Kiss him down, but because I have so much Viz Def, but it's okay, fair enough. It stops him from being complete setup fodder, which is really all he needs because he has potential Scarfers and Sucker Punch. Anyway, so now we finally see the Zarak disguising as Urshifu because I was forced into Slowking. And yeah, so I can go into my Corviknight on the locked Hyper Voice. I could have gone Spectrium, but I wanted to U-turn to get my Zarude in instead, as I felt that was more important. So I get my Zarude in finally, and I know that I have to force something. This game, I'm like already way behind. He's crippled my Corviknight, and he's chunked my G-King, taken my Zapdos. He's got a ton of information. I really need to catch up, so here I'm just going to click SD, and knowing that I can't really afford to switch and continually scout, and also knowing that this is highly likely to be Zarak, I'm just going to stay in and risk Hyper Beam because I felt like I didn't have really any other option, um, as I could eat any other hit, and yeah, I can get an opportunity to heal up on his Cinderace, Palafin, Aloe, or Fezandipity, just not Urshifu. Anyway, I'm going to sack Corviknight. Unfortunately, I don't know if he's Scarf or Banded yet, because that could have been a theoretical roll, but it does give me an opportunity to get my U-turn off with Landorus, assuming that he doesn't want to stay in. If he did stay in, I'd assume that he's Banded, because Scarf does not kill me, as we know, and if he goes first and I U-turn, then it doesn't really matter anyways. Um, Actually, I thought that if he was Scarf, there was a good chance that I lost on the spot there. I needed, yeah, because I'm not sure if my Spectre lives Scarf, Wicked Blow, Terra Dark. I think it's a roll. It's not a good one for me, though. So if he was Scarf, he could have won on the spot there just by staying in, but he decides not to. Very fortunate. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was getting pounded for most of this game, but Zarude is so good that it's going to bail me out. So we get the U-turn play, and we bring our Zarude into synthesis up on the Ala. All is fine and dandy. He's going to go into a Shifu. I'm going to preserve this because I don't know if he's banned or not, and I'm going to have to scout via Slowking because I felt as though my Lando was simply far more useful as a reliable Punisher to Vezin and just a Scarfing Con in general. Just have more utility, um, especially because it can also live a hit from Urshifu from 4, since it's either faster than Banded or yeah, it lives a Scarf or Kibler. Okay, so Slowking gets sacked here. I can't go into my Zarude because I don't want to have the synthesis as he goes hard Urshifu because then I'm in the same. Even if he Scarf, it's still a bad position for me. So yeah, I'm gonna sack my G King to get me a free SD, and now he's gonna go for Serendipity. So I'm just gonna take this as an opportunity to spam my SD, and I can jungle healing any beat up damage. I have to jungle healing off the poison so that I can stay as healthy as possible in case he U-turns. Um, so here I jungle healing as a result. It's gonna go into Cinderace and presumably U-turn back. Yeah. Um, and because of this U-turn chip, I'm going to spam Synthesis because I want to be as full as I possibly can against the Urshifu. Here I'm just going to scout damage against the Serendipity to get an idea of what I needed to boost to. And I realized I 2KO him. Then I was thinking about it more, and I think eventually, yeah, I just take the kill when I can get it because I get a lucky poison dodge, I remember. But I enter this prolonged exchange with Cinderace. He has to do this because he needs to chip me for his Urshifu since I know he's not banded based off the U-turn damage I saw on my G-King. I'm pretty sure he's scarfed, in fact, at this point, which means he did fumble an opportunity to just win this game on the spot. But yeah, no comment. Anyway, here I'm just going to spam jungle healing because it does enough to heal me back from U-turn and it accounts for Fireball burns as well. But then I realized he's just going to try to PP stall me, so I'm just going to spam some SDs to try to last that out. I may as well. So he catches me here with a burn on an SD turn, which is like not the end of the world because I can just jungle healing the next turn. It's a little bit awkward, but because I'm at +4, I know I one-shot everything on his team now, so it's not super important. And I get it back up to a decent enough amount with jungle healing. Here he does Wicked Blow and does a decent chunk, but not enough. Yeah, Zarude is just really insanely fat, like super broken. He goes into Palafin. If he jet punched here, I kill him and he enters an endgame with Cinderace plus Aloe. And then it's a question of can I win with my minimal HP Zarude plus Lando and Spectra against those two. Knowing it's banded Aloe, it actually complicates that significantly because my Landorus basically can never force through Aloe. But here's the thing. U-turn was doing how much? I'm trying to remember. I had a specific game plan. Yes, I remember. So here's how this endgame goes. So how this endgame goes is quite simple actually. Spectra can only I can just nasty plot up and force him to revenge my Spectra with his Cinderace. I think yeah, this is the sequence I had in mind. Actually, is this a 50-50 sequence? Yeah, my thinking here was that I could use Spectre to force him to revenge with one of Aloe or Sucker Punch Cinderace. If he revenges with Sucker Punch Cinderace, yeah, because he's at 83, I think he just dies to U-turn from my Landorus. Um, so here's how it would go. Um, I'd have to bring in my I'd have to get in my Spectre, which probably looks like him going Cinderace and clicking on a Powerball or U-turn. I'd have to go into Landorus. He'd go Aloe. If he clicks U-turn, we'll say that's worse than him clicking Powerball for me. Um, I'd say, yeah. So yeah, so we'll say he goes Cinderace and clicks U-turn. I go Landorus. I click I can click one of Earthquake or oh no, he U-turns into his Aloe. He has Aloe into my Landorus. I can U-turn into my Spectra. He'll probably flip turn or liquidation. If he liquidates, then I can nasty plot. He liquidates again, and I can Dreading Kiss spam to beat the Aloe in any prolonged exchange. You'll have the revenge with Sucker Punch Cinderace. He can either hard pivot in on a G-Kiss, or if he flip turned, he can bring it in that way. And then, yeah, as long as I have a nasty plot up when the Cinderace comes in, he's forced to Sucker Punch me, because otherwise he dies to +2 Shadow Ball. And if he Sucker Punches me, I can revenge with Scarf Lander. If he sacks his Cinderace to U-turn, then my Zarude wins. If he switches into Aloe, then I can bring in Zarude on that and get my Synthesis up, so it's a checkmate. So yeah, this endgame is always won, no matter what. Even if he Jet punches the point I'm making, the game was over at this point. Um, Man, I really beefed that. I should have been able to explain that more cleanly. I hope that was like, yeah, I hope I made that clear. Anyways, none of that happened. I stay in here. Theoretically, it was actually a better play for me to switch, all of that considered, but I was being lazy. And I don't know. I'm just lazy. If he crit there, I could have lost though. Um, but yeah, anyways, I fuck around here clicking synthesis for no reason, and then I just end the game. Um, yeah, cool game. Zarude deadlifted me. I got, yeah, that Lando turn basically set me back really, really far because he proceeded to just play it extraordinarily aggressively for the rest of the game. um, I probably fucked up sacking my Zapdos, and I really needed to recognize that I needed to preserve it in fear of potential Scarf or Shifu. I just didn't register that. And yeah, I probably should have lost to Scarf or Shifu. Fortunately, he didn't play it, and he didn't play it like that, and that allowed me to claw this back. So yeah, really fortunate week one. Zarude is legitimately the GOAT. This Pokemon is insanely good. This is what I mean when I say its stats are insane. This Pokemon is like a Swiss Army knife. It's not easy to switch into. It's not easy to revenge either. And it's got fantastic setup options. So yeah, that's it for week one. Yeah, and I think Zarude gets 6 here as well, which is pretty cool. Kill leader. Anyways, yeah, good game. Week two is going up next week. I play Zooch. It's an interesting game. Uh, we'll have some nice analysis for that, hopefully. So yeah, be sure to check that out. Yeah, I'll see you guys for that, I guess. All right.